There is a moment, they say, when a woman stops waiting for permission, and that moment, for Catherine, Princess of Wales, may have already arrived. The world had watched her disappear. In January of 2024, Kensington Palace made the quiet announcement that the Princess of Wales had undergone planned abdominal surgery and that she would not return to public duties until after Easter. What followed was something the modern royal family had never quite experienced, a silence so deep it began to speak for itself. Weeks passed, then months. The public, already rattled by King Charles's concurrent cancer diagnosis, began to fill the quiet with speculation. Cameras caught nothing. Official statements said almost nothing. And in that vacuum, Catherine became the most talked-about woman in Britain, precisely because no one could see her. Then in September 2024, she stepped back into the light. Standing before the cameras in a garden, Catherine confirmed what few had dared say plainly. She had been receiving chemotherapy. She had completed the treatment. She was, carefully and gratefully, in remission. The statement was brief, dignified, and devastating in its honesty. Millions watched it across the world, and what they saw was not a fragile figure asking for sympathy. What they saw was a woman who had walked through something private and terrifying, and had chosen to return to public life entirely on her own terms. That choice, quiet, deliberate, and unmistakably intentional, would set the tone for everything that came next. Catherine made her first speech in over 2 years when she attended the Future Workforce Summit in London in November of 2024, and royal experts noted she would continue to be a key pillar in the monarchy's 2026 operations. The return was not triumphant in any flashy sense. There were no grand announcements, no dramatic press tour. It was exactly the kind of re-entry Catherine has always preferred, purposeful, grounded, and entirely focused on the work itself. She showed up, she spoke, she stayed. The Australian Women's Weekly. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams described her as fundamental to the future of the institution, noting that her popularity, shared with Prince William, made her presence increasingly important, and that her influence on fashion and British industry gave her a platform unlike any other senior royal. But what was becoming clear as 2025 unfolded was that Catherine's influence extended beyond fashion and public appearances. She was beginning to move within the royal family itself with a quiet but unmistakable confidence, and not everyone in the palace was entirely comfortable with it. AOL. Tension was reportedly brewing within the royal household, centering on Queen Camilla and Catherine, Princess of Wales. Camilla's relationship with the royal family has long been complicated, shaped by lingering resentment over her once-unaccepted affair with King Charles. For years, Camilla had worked hard to transform public perception of herself, from the woman blamed for the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage to a respected working queen. She had done events, earned titles, built a reputation. By the time she became queen consort in 2022, many observers believed she had finally, firmly secured her place. And she had. But the question of where Catherine stood in relation to her and where she was heading never fully went away. The royal observer. The incident that first brought these tensions into public view happened during a high-profile state visit. During the Trump state visit to Britain in 2025, as Catherine joined Melania Trump and Camilla at Windsor Castle, video footage was shared online, and royal fans believed Camilla appeared to shoo Catherine away during a conversation. The moment was brief. It was caught on camera almost by accident. And it became one of the most discussed royal videos of the year, dissected frame by frame, interpreted endlessly, and used as a kind of shorthand for a larger tension that palace insiders had reportedly been aware of for some time. Royal Insider. A source revealed that Camilla had been reminding Catherine that she was calling the shots for now, and that it was not Catherine or Prince William's place to be throwing their weight around. The source also noted that Camilla was territorial by nature, and that she had been extremely kind and supportive toward Catherine throughout her cancer struggles, but that an underlying tension clearly remained. Yahoo! This was the contradiction at the heart of their relationship. Camilla had reportedly shown genuine warmth during Catherine's illness. Sources close to the palace noted she had checked in, offered support, and publicly maintained a dignified unity with her daughter-in-law during one of the most difficult periods the Wales family had faced. That part was real. But so was the other part, the awareness that Catherine's return to public life was not simply a recovery story. It was the beginning of something larger. And Camilla, whatever her private feelings, understood exactly what that meant. Fresh reports emerged suggesting that while Camilla recognized Catherine's value to the royal family, feelings of insecurity may still have existed due to the Princess of Wales's immense popularity with the public. That popularity was not manufactured. It was not the result of a campaign or a strategy. It had accumulated quietly over 15 years of public life. Through the school runs, the charity visits, the careful appearances at Wimbledon and the cenotaph, the videos of Catherine talking to children, crouching down to their level, listening with a kind of attention that felt genuine because it was. She had not tried to be beloved. She simply was. Celebrity gossip. And as her schedule expanded through 2025, carefully, selectively, always with her children's routines and her own health firmly as the priority, the question of power within the palace began to shift in ways that were subtle but unmistakable. In 2026, Prince William and Catherine were set to take on the major royal duty of granting their first royal warrants, a prestigious honor recognizing companies and individuals for providing goods and services to the royal family. In doing so, Catherine was set to become the first Princess of Wales to grant a royal warrant in 116 years. Not even Princess Diana had the opportunity to do so. The significance of that was not lost on palace observers. It was not merely a symbolic role. It was an institutional one, connecting the future monarch's household directly to British industry, tradition, and commerce. It was, in the language of royalty, a statement of permanence. Yahoo! Then came January 2026, and the magazine that changed the temperature inside the palace considerably. Rumors of tensions rippled through the corridors of Buckingham Palace following an unprecedented move by the inner circle of Princess Catherine. While the royal family usually maintains a policy of never complaining and never explaining, a series of candid remarks by the Princess of Wales's friends left some senior royals feeling sidelined, especially Queen Camilla. The catalyst was a high-profile feature in the Times magazine, which offered an intimate look at the future queen. Titled Arise, Queen Kate in print, the piece relied heavily on palace insiders and long-term friends to paint a picture of how the princess intended to modernize the monarchy. The Royal Observer. The article was striking not because it said anything scandalous. It was striking because of what it assumed. It assumed a future. It described Catherine's intentions as a queen, her approach to the role, her values, her vision. It described her as ambitious, bold, and keen to deliver impactful change, and included commentary from those close to her suggesting she would be a queen who listened, who leaned in, who understood the need to work together with society to drive meaningful reform. Newsweek. The headline, Arise, Queen Kate, was striking, and royal commentators immediately raised questions about who had sanctioned the story. Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel wondered openly whether Kate and William had in fact approved the article about her intentions when she becomes queen, and whether those closest to her had done her any favors by speaking so freely. She went on to note that even if unconsciously offered, this attention to Catherine's future position might come across as jumping the gun, and that the emphasis on her queenly qualities was a slap in the face for the present queen. The Royal Observer. Platel wrote plainly that Charles and Camilla were still working at full capacity, with many engagements planned in the diary including a joint official state visit to the United States for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and that there would come a time to celebrate the future of King William and Queen Catherine, but that it was not yet. Newsweek. But the palace's reaction behind closed doors was reportedly sharper than any public commentary captured. Insiders told OK, magazine, that open warfare had erupted between the Princess of Wales and Queen Camilla, which they said had become almost impossible to contain. The latest flare-up followed months of murmurs about a breakdown in their relationship, with palace aides tracing the origins back to the moment during the Trump state visit the previous year. The magazine article had not created the tension, it had illuminated it. AOL. The situation had been further compounded by the fallout surrounding the former Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, who had been stripped of their remaining royal titles and were preparing to vacate their royal lodge home. One insider said the York scandal had taken a heavy toll on both Catherine and Camilla, and that Catherine had stood firmly alongside William throughout it all, drawn into an endless cycle of meetings, conversations, and debates. AOL. This was the other dimension of what Catherine's boldness represented. It was not simply about her personal ambitions or her public image. It was about the direction of the monarchy itself. William and Catherine had reportedly been increasingly vocal in internal discussions about how the institution should present itself, which battles to fight, which figures to distance the crown from, and how to prepare the public for a transition that, while not imminent, was no longer entirely abstract. Camilla was reportedly frustrated as Catherine quietly advocated for William and Harry's reunion, adding yet another layer to a relationship already operating under considerable strain. The royal observer. The Harry dimension was particularly sensitive. For years, the official palace position on the Duke of Sussex had been studied neutrality, but Catherine's reported quiet advocacy for some form of reconciliation between the two brothers was significant, not because it was a dramatic public intervention, but because it signaled exactly the kind of influence she was beginning to exercise behind palace walls. She was not shouting. She was not leaking. She was simply making her views known in the spaces that mattered, and those views were beginning to shape decisions. Princess Diana's astrologer, Debbie Frank, had predicted that Camilla would feel a significant shift in 2026, with her dynamic with King Charles being rewritten and her role clearly defined from April onwards, with a firm strategy in place that would see her step back from duties that younger royals could perform. Whether one placed any faith in astrology or not, the underlying observation was grounded in something real. The balance of visibility, energy, and public expectation within the royal family was changing, and Catherine, returned from illness, steady and deliberate, was at the center of that change. AOL. In 2025, the hardest-working royal was crowned King Charles with 535 public appearances. Catherine was ranked 10th with 68 engagements, while William had 202. With Catherine now in remission, it was believed her schedule would become slightly busier, though she would remain selective, always prioritizing her children George, Louis, and Charlotte. That selectivity was itself a form of power. Every appearance Catherine made carried weight precisely because she did not make them carelessly. She had learned, through illness and through years of scrutiny, that presence is most powerful when it is not constant, when it is chosen. The Australian Women's Weekly. The article in the Times magazine about Catherine's intentions, when she becomes queen, was interpreted by some as a slight against the woman currently wearing the crown. The praise for Catherine's future as queen, royal commentators noted, could intentionally or not be read as a commentary on the present. The royal observer. That was the thing about power in the royal family. It was rarely exercised openly. It moved through symbolism, through timing, through which room you walked into and how long you stayed. It moved through which articles appeared and whose friends were quoted. And in early 2026, the symbolism was pointing in one direction with an unusual degree of clarity. Catherine had not released a statement. She had not given an interview. She had not made any formal move. But the world around her was beginning to describe the monarchy in terms that placed her at the center of its future. And that description, once it enters public consciousness, has a way of becoming its own kind of reality. Camilla had reportedly given Catherine a sentimental wedding gift years earlier, a bracelet engraved with 2CS, believed to stand for Camilla and Catherine, a gesture that had been read at the time as an olive branch, a recognition between two women of the complexity of the position they each occupied. That gesture had meant something once, and it still did in its way. But the palace was no longer the same institution it had been in 2011, and the women inside it were not the same women. They had both changed. The question was whether the space between them had changed enough to hold them both comfortably. Royal insider. What Catherine had done, whether by design or simply by existing with quiet confidence in the aftermath of everything she had survived, was to make the palace take her seriously not as a future queen in some distant theoretical sense, but as a present force. A woman with opinions, with relationships, with influence over the direction of the family and the institution she would one day lead. She had not demanded that recognition. She had simply earned it, slowly and without fanfare, in the way she had always done everything. There is a version of this story that ends neatly. A reconciliation, a handshake, a carefully staged photograph of two women smiling together outside a church. That version may yet happen. Royals are practiced at performance, and the institution itself demands a surface of unity that its members, whatever their private feelings, generally maintain. But there is another version, quieter, and perhaps more honest, in which no single dramatic moment resolves anything, in which Catherine simply continues doing what she has always done, and the palace slowly, irreversibly, reorganizes itself around where she stands. In which Camilla's frustration, real and understandable as it is, becomes less relevant not because anyone defeats her, but because history moves forward, as it always does, and the future belongs to the one still becoming. That version is already underway. It has been for some time. And in the corridors of Buckingham Palace, where power rarely announces itself loudly, the people who understand these things are watching Catherine very carefully, and they know exactly what they are seeing.